Wednesday, Briggs Hopson, Bubba Hopson, Mississippi Senator District 23, from the counties of Essequibo County, Warren County, Yazoo counties, and chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm great, Paul. I'm a little bit under the weather today, so that's why I'm doing this from home. Unfortunately, I've may have been exposed, and I'm got a family full of folks that have tested positive.
Whoa.
So I'm going to stick away from the Capitol for a couple of days and see how things go. But otherwise, really good. Thank you.
Any symptoms at all? Or, I mean, have you lost your appetite, or do you want to go out and buy a motorcycle, anything like that? Yeah.
Well, I've had some high fever and headaches, so probably the typical things. But I think I'll survive.
But the weird thing about this is we have no idea. We don't even consider. Maybe it's just a common cold. You know, the common cold has become so uncommon now. So possibility that could be it. But one way or the other, I thank you for taking the time here. There are so many things to talk about, and just give me an overview of where you want to see the Senate go as far as appropriations. Some of the things that you want to alert the people of the state about what as soon as you get back, the things that are going to be going on within certainly your committee.
Well, the good thing about this earlier in the session is there's no appropriations that really take place early on.
Yeah.
Although the ARP funds, American Rescue Plan funds, are certainly up for early consideration. I want to commend Chairman, my Vice Chair and Subcommittee Chair, John Polk, for doing an outstanding job leading the subcommittee that the Lieutenant Governor and I composed in the Senate. They have had several hearings, I think 5 or 6 hearings of different agencies and some outside groups about some of the categories that qualify under ARP. And Paul, look, we got $1.8 billion coming through the American Rescue Plan to Mississippi. That's, you can look at that and say good news or bad news, but we've got $8.3 billion of requests for those $1.8 billion. And in fact, Senator Polk and I were even meeting yesterday with a couple of agency heads to talk about some of their needs. One of the things I think he and the committee have looked at is trying to prioritize the areas where we're going to get the most bang for the buck, number one. And number two is taking care of some critical needs in Mississippi that need to be addressed because of certain things like maybe there's a lawsuit on something, or maybe there's just a major infrastructure, water and sewer type need that needs to be handled. So that will be taken care of probably early. Now, the rest of appropriations will be towards the end of the session, so we do have time for that.
When we talk about water and sewer, that infrastructure underground, we understand it's been neglected for so many decades, and we understand that. But is there, Briggs, a defined amount that can be spent within that 1.8 on that type of thing, then you have to spend it on something else, or is it all in one kitty? And if people need this, you can ditch it out that way. Well,
make sure I understand you correctly. That 1.8 is all in one kitty. Now it's up to the legislature to decide how much goes to the various categories, and certainly we know that the big categories are water and sewer. That's a huge one. That's where many of the needs are. Then you've got broadband. You've got losses for different things. I think the tourism industry is going to be looking at some things, and the committee is looking at things for some areas of state government and local government where you've had some losses, and those will be kind of prioritized issues that we will handle.
Is anybody concerned about this? Because I understand we got a lot of money, and it's coming from different areas, and you know better than anybody the numbers that we closed out December, and if you'll give us a little bit of a report on that. But as we closed out the last fiscal year, and we go into this calendar year, there's a lot of lagniappe there, even without the Fed dollars. But speak to that for a moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Paul, that's a great question. And here's what I want people to understand that I think is very, very important. A couple things. One, you're right. We budget revenue excesses are really high right now. And I think one of the things that most of us conservatives in the legislature want to do is try to get some of these dollars back in the taxpayers' pockets, because it's the taxpayers' money anyway. But the second thing is, I want to go back 2 years. We've got we had drastic cuts in the state budget a couple of years ago because right after COVID, everything seemed to be falling apart, and we had major losses. You remember we had 1 month where we had $240 million roughly in losses. So we really had to hammer the FY21 budget really hard. Well, then the federal government comes in and pushes all this money into the economy, and then between the low budget we set and this flow of funds from the federal government, and obviously some of the bounce back from spending when you didn't have any from COVID. You got a bunch of money pushing through the economy. Some of that you got to look at and say, well, first of all, the excesses are due to the fact we had lower budgets the last 2 years. Secondly, you got to understand that a lot of it's because the federal government is pushing money through. And I think, frankly, for the foreseeable future, you're going to have a lot of money flowing through with the water and sewer projects, with the infrastructure projects that we haven't even talked about. And that's going to be coming this session too. So we've got a lot of money that's going to be pushed through the economy. So you have to balance all that. And then you've got to balance in inflation. That's clearly here, and it's affecting our economy right now. And that's going to have some negative effects. It's already got negative effects. Yeah. I think I heard right before I jumped on, there was some discussion about the high cost of groceries. Perfect example of how that's going to affect people's ability to spend on different things.
Where does the infrastructure bill and those priorities and are they critiqued the same way, or are they parceled out the same way as far as the infrastructure bill?
Yeah, the infrastructure is going to be a little bit different. My hope and anticipation, and I've spoken with the Lieutenant Governor and I've spoken with Brad White about this, and Brad is the director of MDOT. Brad and I and the Lieutenant Governor talked about getting together soon to talk about those projects. And I think what we've got to do is balance two things. One is we've got some areas of the state where we've got bridges out, we've got some roads that are really in deplorable shape, and we've got to get those corrected. And this is an opportunity to do it. Now, Brad will be the first one to tell you, even though we've got a lot of money coming through the infrastructure bill, it's really not quite as much as people think. I mean, I think this is getting an additional $500 to $600 million on top of what we'd normally get in a highway bill. But it's something that's going to help out in those areas. And the other part is we've got places like here in Warren County, we've got a major need for an overhaul of I-20. We've got really unsafe on-ramps and off-ramps that were designed in the 50s, and they're way outdated, and they become a problem. So we can't, we got to find a way to make sure we got money going to places that have some major changes needed that are very expensive. So that's some of the discussion I think we'll have very soon.
Mr. Chairman, is anybody talking about moving, and I know there was some discussion on this one because of the success of the lottery. It surpassed the 80 million quite rapidly. Is there any talk at all about changing that formula as far as MDOT's concerned?
Yeah, Paul, I've heard some discussion about it. Nothing that's really gotten legs as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, I think the MDOT's happy to have the first $80 million of the lottery, and I think the education community and through the EEF program that gets the excess certainly helped out in some areas last year. We did some things. We updated some computer systems through NDE and all of our public schools throughout the state last year with some of those funds. So nothing that's really gotten legs at this point.
I got it. Anybody talking about where the allocating or targeting some of the money from the proposed medical marijuana industry, as far as your committee on appropriations? Are there any bills like that?
Not that I've seen yet. I've been speaking with Kevin Blackwell in the last couple of days about some of the details of that bill, really more of the substantive issues first that we need to get past. I think do we need to do that? Do we need to do that? Do we need to go on and target that money coming in? Because we have no idea how much money we're talking about. Some people say $500 million a year, but it could be anything. But do you think that there will be some type of bill that will be seriously considered, and you can answer this when we come back, to actually target that to education or target it to roads and bridges, et cetera, or will the money go directly into the general fund? More with the Appropriation Chairman in the Senate, Briggs Hopson, when we return. We're back live on a Wednesday. I do want to mention this. The COVID positive test in the last reporting period of 3 o'clock yesterday was 4,000.
840, and Briggs, we've been hovering around that 45 to 4,800 level average every day. The additional viral-related death tolls released yesterday were 37, and I saw that 37 and said, wait a minute. But then when you start reading the fine print below that, the 37 deaths, 10 of those 37 were from December 13th of last year through January 3rd of this year. That's like a 3-week span. And then the remaining 27 were from 2 years ago, April 2020 through December 28th, 2021. You're an attorney. Why does it take that long to get the certification or a death certificate?
I don't know. That sounds more like a health issue than a legal issue. But I spoke with the governor yesterday. Go ahead. I was going to say I spoke to the governor yesterday. We were talking about COVID issues, and he was saying, kind of citing the numbers that you just did, and saying how remarkably fast it's changed from the COVID positives to where we were just recently until now, and this Omicron virus. The good thing, at least based on most accounts, is that this COVID virus, this strain, is not nearly as debilitating as the other ones. So
right.
I guess, maybe like a cold, as you mentioned at the outset of the broadcast, that this may be more like cold-like symptoms. That seems to be what I have and my family members have. So anyway, hopefully it won't be too bad for anybody.
Let me go back to the personal income tax. There seems to be a division between the House and Senate on this. You alluded to giving people some of their money back. Certainly now is more important than ever before. I can't imagine facing the highway situation with an increased gas tax. Not at this time. We have pain at the pump. That's the worst since the Jimmy Carter days. So where do you stand as chairman of appropriation and maybe the body of the Senate as far as the personal income tax is concerned?
Well, I think it's something that we need to look at as part of a whole package. I'll give you one example, Paul. What I'm filing, I haven't filed it yet because I'm just getting the details worked out, but I'll be filing a bill to reduce the state portion of the car tag tax. So that's something that I want to look at, or something that I want to do, period. And I think that's one area. Then we've also got other taxes we can look at. Obviously, sales tax is a big driver of our economy and a big driver of our budget, and also the income tax. And I'm not, let me say, I'm not married or totally opposed to any one area, but I think what we need to do is look at a package that is going to make sense. And I've had good discussions with the Lieutenant Governor and Senator Harkins and some other members of the Senate to talk about what it is that we can get the votes on, number one, and that makes sense. And I think you've got to factor in all the things that I mentioned earlier. You got to factor in, what is, as you mentioned before the break, what is medical marijuana going to do for us? How is inflation going to affect us? And those things need to be considered. And it's not something that any of us can do by ourselves. It's going to take a collaborative effort and really a lot of good study with getting the best information from the Department of Revenue and the state economists to make that decision.
What draft are we on as far as medical marijuana is concerned? The Lieutenant Governor was with me yesterday, and he said, I quoted him 26 drafts, and he said he's seen 3 or 4 more since then. So have we surpassed 30 drafts on on what will actually be presented?
I don't know. I have not been in the details of the medical marijuana bill, but I understand. Look, I want to give kudos to Kevin Blackwell on our side, and I'm sure Lee Yancey on the House side, because they've been working feverishly to try to get something together. But there are concerns. I have some of the concerns that have been expressed by others about a conservative program, in the sense that we do want to make sure that people that have the debilitating conditions can get access to what they want, but we also want to make sure that this doesn't run amok and that we have problems in various areas. So I think that one thing we can do is start at one level, and if it looks like we need to expand, we can certainly do that. It's much harder to start at a very liberal program and then try to contract later.
The Senate's the use of the federal dollars, we were talking about that earlier, and Is there any area that you think needs more attention than anything else? We talked about the infrastructure, but is there something else out there that we need to take a look at? How are we doing? Because we've kind of left broadband out of this discussion. We talk about highways and infrastructure, but does broadband get the attention that they need in here in the allocation of these funds?
That's a very good question, because broadband is I think critical. We need to get to a place in Mississippi where nobody in the state is without broadband, without the capability of connecting to the internet for whatever reasons, whether it's to buy things or whether it's to get educated. We did send a good bit of money through the CARES Act, as you remember, for broadband. There's also something called RDOF that's about, I want to say, $460 million that will not come through us, but it will go for broadband. Plus, there are some other, heck, I think the infrastructure bill even has some broadband money in it too.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of, and I hear there may be more federal money coming for broadband. I think there is a federal push to make sure nobody in the country is without broadband. So I think while it's important, I think you see broadband getting hit from a lot of different areas in a good way. I think this committee and Senator Polk, again, taking the lead on this, has looked at water and sewer projects. That's going to be a big one. We've got a lot of state needs there, Paul. I'll tell you, even like our Department of Corrections can use some updates in water and sewer.
Yes.
And that's before we get to our rural water and our cities and counties that have their own projects. And you've heard the Lieutenant Governor say there's probably going to be some kind of matching program or something where cities and counties and rurals can put in some money themselves and they can match it with the state dollars that we have through ARPA.
I got you. Give me a figure here, because you're chairman of education, chairman of appropriations in the Senate. Give me a figure. What do you think it's going to cost, regardless of what kind of name you put on it? Medicaid expansion, help for all, whatever it happens to be. What do you think the figure is going to be as far as the dollars that taxes from the federal and our share of that? What number are we looking at that you guys will present to the House?
Paul, let me make sure. I don't know if I'm following your question.
Medicaid expansion. I guess I'm tailing off the Lieutenant Governor's discussion with me yesterday. He said that it's something that we wanted to do, that he felt like we needed to do as far as Medicaid expansion in the state of Mississippi. Now, I don't think he or anybody in the Senate wants to call it Medicaid expansion, put it under another name, whether you expand the current system or whatever the minutiae is going on behind closed doors in the House and Senate, that you guys can come together with. How much are we talking about is this going to cost in taxes? How much will it cost to expand Medicaid with the figures that we have on that we're talking about? Because are we talking about 200,000, 250,000 people, 300,000 people? Do we have any idea what this is going to cost in taxpayers' money? And I understand I'm lumping federal and state together, but we'll have to parse those out.
Paul, frankly, I have not had any discussions with the Lieutenant Governor or anyone else about that program, how that would work. And I think it would depend on how that would work before you could start determining how much money it would cost. Certainly, one of the things we got to look at Medicaid is right now we've got a good FMAP for Mississippi, but that could change pretty quickly and will change at some point. I mean, if we get back to the point, our Medicaid budget's in excess of $900 million. If we get back to one, a lower FMAP, or two, roles are expanded, it's going to cost money. Now how much, I don't know. I'm sure we can get an actuary that could tell us exactly what that would cost, but I have not run those numbers.
So, as the chairman of the Senate, chairman of Senate Appropriation, you haven't been brought into any conversations at all about Medicaid expansion and the cost.
No, not on cost, or those discussions have been kicked around for a while, but never to the point of looking at any cost on that. No.
I got you. All right. So when you get back, what's the top thing on the agenda?
Well, if you're talking about what the top thing on the agenda for, if they don't take it up while I'm gone, I suspect medical marijuana is going to be first up, and then I think redistricting, congressional redistricting first, and then then we'll get to legislative later in the session. As far as appropriations, ARP funding, and I think Senator Polk and his committee will hopefully have a recommendation before Appropriations Committee very soon, and then we'll take that up and start getting those monies to where they need to go.
You know, I don't think we've ever said this before. It's a 3-month session, and everybody loves the 3-month session because you can get in and out. Certainly when you come through that first year, you realize how long 4 months happens to be, even though we cut that a little short. But can we do 3 months with all the money we got to spend? And that's a statement I never thought I would say. So you got 10 seconds, sir.
It's going to be tough, and you know how it is at the end of session for appropriations. It's an all-day, all-night affair, and this one's going to be a really tough one. But we're going to do the best we can.
Briggs, don't be a stranger, sir. Appreciate it very much, and